One. Here we go. All right, y'all. Episode 4 in the building. So joining me is the man with the facts and the man with the man bun. Shout out Mr. Stone Hansen in the building. The future Woj in the building.
Appreciate you having
When
me
Rose
on.
retire, when Rose retires, I feel like you'll be the one to take over.
Hopefully, that would be pretty cool.
So the draft just happened. So who do you think's the biggest winner? Who do you think the biggest winners are so far?
The biggest draft winner to me was the Detroit Pistons. I really liked what they did. I wasn't the biggest Jaden Ivey fan going into the draft, but I thought that uh, going to the best developmental context was the Detroit Pistons because playing off ball to Cade and refining his game to be less of a decision maker and more of a scorer was really ideal for his developmental context. I think that getting Jalen Duran was huge for them, even though the pieces afterwards didn't make much sense in terms of stacking up on centers. But I think that Duran really gives them another building block as a center. I don't really see Isaiah Stewart as that. I think he'll be a fine backup, but I think Duran really has like all star potential. So I really liked what they did, and that was just really good value to get both of them where they did.
All right, give me two more.
Two more winners. All right, let's see here. I really liked what the Pelicans did. I love Dyson Daniels and being able to put him on that team with the scalability that he has, so he doesn't have to be like this primary point guard. He can sort of develop into that if they want. And EJ Liddell at pick 41, I thought was just really awesome value. I had him as like a close to like a top 20 guy on my board, so being able to get him 20 spots later than that was really great. And I think he does space the floor very well, so he makes some sense next to Zion for different options or Valanciunas. So I thought that they did really well. Then my third winner, I thought I really liked what the Magic did because a lot of people had them pegged for Jabari Smith, who I think is going to be a really really good NBA player, but I think Paolo's just a lot more. There's a lot more on ball creativity there, and that you can put him as like your primary offensive option, and he can make it work. And then being able to get Caleb Houston in the early second. He struggled this year for Michigan, but in high school he was a great shooter, pretty solid defender. He doesn't really do much outside of those two things. He really is the definition of like 3 and D, but he does both those things very well.
I fucks with it. Well, I agree with one of your winners, Detroit, because I mean, Jaden not. I mean, putting Jaden Ivey next to Cade and I'm from Memphis, so Jalen Duran. I thought Jalen Duran personally was going to be in the top 10. So when Detroit found a way to get him, I was like, ooh, all right, all right, you know. And Duran, I think Duran could be like Ja. I think Duran could be like Ja, and you kind of right. He doesn't have to be the primary decision maker, but he could just go out there and get buckets. While he
Yeah,
works on becoming a better distributor. And for me, the Warriors, because I like Patrick Baldwin more than most people. I thought he just went to the school he went to just to play with his dad, and I think that's just,
terrible decision.
yeah, I think that was just all it was. So when I would watch him and I'm like, he doesn't really look the same, but I think he kind of went in where they were like, okay, you're at this small school, you got to get 25 a night. So because he wasn't doing that and because he dealt with some injuries, he kind of slips. And I was like, oh, and then the Warriors got him. That was a little surprise. That was good for me. Well, not for me, but like for them. They only got to play him right now, and he could. If they lose Wiggins, they can plug him right in. And number three, um, I don't necessarily want to say a team. I mean, I think the Mavericks got the win because I'm a Jaden Hardy guy. I'm a Jaden Hardy guy. So losing Jalen Brunson, now you got another guy who can just come in and get buckets, and he's a dog. So you don't really. So Lucas pretty much is always controlling the ball, and maybe Dinwiddie here and there, but Dallas didn't have anybody off the bench that could just come in and get instant offense. And I think Jaden Hardy should have been picked in the lottery. So to get him in the second round, and you traded your first round pick and a bunch of guys who won't even play for the Rockets for Christian Wood. So I give them the win. You know As far as losers, I don't like saying losers because we really don't know. I don't really like saying losers, but the Lakers, man, I don't know. I don't want to say it, but
That
you know,
they're definitely a loser to me.
I
I'm
don't
a
want
I'm
to
a
like.
Laker fan, but
I don't have a problem with Max Christie. I have a problem trading up to the top of the second and drafting Max Christie.
yeah,
Like
that's
if
what
the
didn't.
Lakers got him in the 40s or 50s, I'd be cool with it. But you traded up to 35, and I was like, I ain't gonna lie. I know you're not the biggest Jaden Hardy guy. I was kind of like, okay, we can get the guy. We can get Hardy. And then we got Max Christie. So I was a
I'm not
little
even
sad about that.
I'm not the biggest Hardy fan, but I do think that like the Mavericks would be really good. I think the Lakers would have been in like a fine spot for Hardy because like you have a heliocentric offense with LeBron controlling most of the ball, and AD in the pick and roll, and then Hardy just confined to that Schroeder's role. And I think in that role he can that's where he's best at. I think putting him more in on ball situations is where he's going to struggle more. So that would have been a fine pick. Christie's just it's so much of like he looks like he is a good player because he has the frame, he has the shooting stroke and develop or the aesthetic to it, but it doesn't drop. Defensively, he's like not that great. I think he people overrate him because he looks like a wing and people automatically think wings are good defenders, but he's not. He does move off ball super well. So hopefully, like if the shot comes around, I think it's really going to be a good pick, but you're betting a lot on something that hasn't really been proven yet. So hopefully that he gets that chance. I mean, he will get that chance because it's not like there's a whole lot of talent in front of him on the wings. But the Lakers did sign some guys, so we'll see how that works and how he develops from here.
And I ain't, you know, I was it definitely got me a little bit. I wasn't really. I mean, I wasn't necessarily upset. And another loser, y'all like this dude more. I don't think it's not necessarily the players that they chose. I don't like what the Spurs did. But at the time, I didn't know what they were doing with DeJounte Murray. So I was
Yeah,
wondering why they drafted so many guards and they drafted like, another kind of, and shown is kind of like a wing small big, kind of like Kai Jones got a. So
yeah,
I didn't really know what the Spurs were doing at all. And
yeah.
the Rockets, the Rockets didn't have a bad draft, but their pick, what was the guy's name? 17.
Tari Eason.
Yeah, I didn't. Not knocking the player, just knocking where they picked him.
Yeah, there is. I mean, he was supposed to go higher. And then, like the last month or so, there's like intel coming out, and he was starting to drop a bit for people. But I think he makes sense because, well, I really liked the Garuba pick last year, and in Eason sort of gives them another piece as a defensive guy because when you're playing Sengun, the amount of minutes that they probably will, you need to have some sort of defensive overlap there because he's an absolute liability on that end, even though he's got some offensive chops. So being able to put Eason or Garuba and sort of interchanging them and interlocking them makes sense to me. I didn't really get the Ty Washington pick. Although for a
I
lot of
think
people,
they
that's
picked him because he was just like you didn't want to see him drop any further.
yeah,
I didn't. I think that was why they picked him.
it's just good value, I guess, for where a lot of people had him because people had him like lottery. But I think that like he's a really good shooter and good passer. He just can't create anything. He can't get to the rim, and it's he has no burst or anything. But so I don't really understand like how you compare him with like Jalen Green or Kevin Porter Jr. because those are both of their deficiencies as well. So I, I I understand it from the value perspective. I just don't necessarily get it from like how it necessarily works. But I didn't hate their draft. The Spurs were definitely confusing to me. Sohan was my favorite pick just because he's such a Spurs guy. Like if there's any team that's going to get him to shoot, it's the Pelicans or the Spurs or the Raptors. But the Spurs, he's such like a cerebral guy who plays really hard team defense, and just calculates everything. I didn't really get the Branham and Wesley picks because, like you said, it was before the DeJounte trade, and there's just a lot of guards. And then you have Vassell there, Primo there, Trey
Yes.
Jones, who towards the end of the season last year was starting to crank it up. So having 5 guards there just doesn't make a ton of sense, even though I didn't hate the value necessarily. I actually liked where they got Wesley at 25, but it just there's so many guys there that need minutes to develop. I don't really get it, and it's sort of how I felt about the Thunder too.
Um, yeah, drafting two Jalen Williamses, I was just like, yeah. The Thunder just have too many. The Thunder just have too many. Like they have too many assets.
Yeah,
Like at
they
some point you have to you have to get some
yeah,
established guys in there. You have to.
it's there's not enough consolidation made for them because right now you have a lot of guys, like a lot of young guys that I really like how they draft. I like a lot of the picks that they take, but those guys need minutes to get better, and you can't provide that when there's 14 of those guys on your
Yeah, you got
roster.
too.
So
Yeah, you have way too many.
yeah,
Like
yeah, and the problem is too that besides like Mike Muscala, who for some reason has like been their
yeah, that's
veteran
like weird. I'm
presence.
like, yo, why is he there?
Yeah, he's the only
He just
veteran
got re-signed.
presence.
He's all he got re-signed.
Yeah, yeah, for a 1 year vet minimum, which is
Mhm.
fine value. They'll probably just trade him for a second rounder or something at the
Another draft
deadline.
pick. Another fucking draft
Yeah,
pick.
yeah. They're going about this the wrong way for me. It's just you have to have some sort of veteran to ease the transition for young guys. If you just put young guys all at the court at once, it's generally like not the ideal developmental context.
it's gonna be chaotic. And
Yeah,
if SGA is what they think he is, they gotta like this is the last year that they can be awful. Like they
yeah.
have to at
After
least like tread for they have to at least like be in contention for the play in next year.
exactly, if next year if they even if they don't get Wembanyama, like let's just say that they get the 4th pick or something, and that's still a really, really good player. It's one of the Thompson twins or Derek Whitehead, something like that. It's a really good player, and you have a lot of really good young guys. Now Presti has to move some of those young guys to bring in veterans to help excel your team forward because Shea's not going to want to stick around for another year or two if you're just getting like the 15th or 14th seed again. So yeah, Presti has to really like nail this draft and then nail next off season in order to keep Shea around.
Another like loser I had was and it's kind of like and it's not even just the draft, it's just free agency too. It's Milwaukee. Because Milwaukee for some reason just never addresses their same problem. You ain't got you ain't got no backup center. And if Giannis, Drew, or Middleton ain't in the game, the offense is stagnant. Like
Yeah.
I don't know why people are so against getting guys who can just whose primary skill is isolation basketball. Like
Yeah.
you gotta have well, especially off the bench, you have to have it because you know what I'm saying. Because sometimes at the end of the day, you're not going to get an open shot if you're standing around. They're not going to run a play for you. Just tell a guy, hey, go get a bucket. Like Nick Youngs are just not as valuable as they used to be for some reason.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people have shifted to like team offense. I mean, we saw it with the Celtics in the finals. Like if Jason Tatum wasn't being able to isolate and get his own shots and they weren't dropping, then the Celtics are sort of in trouble. The problem is where the Bucks are picking at 28. There's not a ton of those guys like that are quality value, but I didn't mind it. Like I think Marjan's I had him like a top 20 guy because I think having a guy who plays really strong defense and you hope that the shooting translates. I know some people question it, but I think it will. Like you saw how Grayson Allen was just unplayable for them in the playoffs. He could not hit a
No, he
shot.
was unplayable after the first round. In the
Yeah,
first round,
yeah,
he averaged
yeah. He
like
was hot.
20.
Yeah,
Maybe not 20, but he had a couple 20-point games.
he's streaky, so I don't mind the process of like let's just get another guy. So on the nights that Grayson isn't hitting anything and he's not playable, at least Marjan gives you that defense that Grayson doesn't necessarily provide. So I don't hate that
And,
aspect, but I do think that there's other options too that make sense.
and then you signed Joe Ingles, and you brought back Wesley Matthews. You still have Pat Connaughton, and
Yeah,
I'm just like,
and
dude, like,
Ingles, they spent like I think they spent the veteran mid level exception on Ingles, and he won't even be back until like January or February because of this ACL injury. So it didn't make a lot of sense to me bringing him in at all, really.
yeah, once Middleton went down, like it was pretty much a wrap for them because you put way more on Giannis and you put way more on Drew. because
Yeah.
Drew is gonna be
And
hounding everybody on defense.
to your point, like you have to start looking at getting another like young center to start developing or something because Lopez is every year is getting less and less immobile.
They got the
So
homie. What's his name? I can't pronounce his
Portis,
name. Huh? No, not
oh
Portis.
no,
The rookie. The one, not
the
the rookie.
rookie.
The guy. I think they picked late first round last year. I can't pronounce his name. I can't
I'm
pronounce his
drawing a
name.
blank. Let me look this up.
Like he's a foreign guy. I can't pronounce his name.
Oh, Sandro
Yeah,
Mamakilishvili.
yeah, that guy.
Yeah. Well, he's the one of the weirdest players I've ever evaluated. He's basically like a 6'11" point guard. He like defensively is one of the worst players I've ever watched. But offensively, he's just like he will run an offense at like 6'11". He's such a good passer. He's really interesting. But I think he's probably going to need another year or so to actually be a contributor if he ever is.
Honestly, I've never seen the guy play.
I,
I saw him do a dunk one time in garbage time. That was it.
Yeah,
I've
he
never.
played at Seton Hall, I believe. Um, yeah, the other team that really confused me was like the Knicks. Like, what are they doing? Moving out of the 11th spot was just confusing to me for like a 25 or some first, but are like heavily protected and not really good. And it just felt like they were rushing to make a move because they didn't want to pick at 11 and they didn't have someone that they really liked. It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Like move back or take a guy that you think is valuable and trade him in the offseason or something. I don't know. I didn't really like that process from them. And if the goal is to sort of build out your roster around RJ and Brunson, which is pretty much all they can get their hands on at this point, I think whoever was available at 11 has some value to that team. So I just didn't really get moving out of it and for future picks that aren't really going to be high or anything.
I thought the Knicks was going to take homie out of Kansas. That's what I thought the Knicks was going to take.
Oh, Agbaji.
Yeah. I'm
Yeah,
sorry. I know these people, but their names are hard to pronounce. Like,
yeah.
yeah, but I was like, I thought the
Agbaji
Knicks
was a
would take.
weird. He was a weird pick for the Cavaliers too, because I mean he's really just a shooter, a spot up shooter, and it doesn't make a lot of sense because he's like a shooting guard slash small forward. He's like an undersized small forward, but you have like Okoro, who's a much better defender than Agbaji, and then you have the shooting around them with a lot of the guards that they have. So it just didn't make a lot of sense. And I thought that there were a lot of players who offer a lot more at pick 14 than what Agbaji brings.
I think they just wanted to get a guy to just help them win now that didn't need to start.
Yeah.
I think that was pretty much what they were going for. Because he's not gonna start over Okoro, even though I don't really like Okoro at all.
Yeah,
But
me either.
he's not gonna start over him. But because he was a late bloomer, there might be more to his game that we haven't seen yet. So
Yeah, I mean that's probably the hope if you're taking him at 14, but yeah, I mean I guess it makes sense because he's low usage and you want the low usage guys around people like Jared Allen and Garland and Mobley now. You don't want guys that are going to take the ball out of their hands. So from that perspective, I guess that makes a little bit of sense.
yeah, they and good thing the Cavs drafted Isaiah Mobley too. You know,
Yeah, they're just trying to make this brother happy.
I don't,
Um,
I never understood like, maybe I'm weird. I never understood like what was wrong with him. He just seems like just a nice overall player. But
yeah, I wasn't in on him because he's so slow. He is like
he's not the athletic guy of his brother, but like
he's
not at
like
all. But like,
yeah. I mean, really, he's a stretch four in theory, but he loves contact. Like he loves just driving in and trying to finish through contact. And I don't know how well that's going to translate against bigger, better NBA defenders. So the hope, I guess, is that he just spaces the floor a lot better than his brother currently does. And, maybe he can be a fine like ninth or 10th guy off the bench as a like a Urson type.
I think he'd be all right. And I think you gotta if you're gonna have a franchise guy, you gotta make him happy.
Yeah, I mean, we saw what the Bucks did with Giannis keeping Denesis around, and
Shit, they
um,
could have got all of them. They
yeah,
might they weren't playing their bottom guys anyway. You can go get Alex out the G. You can go get Kostas
yeah,
from Greece.
Yeah.
Just
Who's
let him
the
on.
there's another team too that did this. I forget who it was, but and it
Mm,
was recent, somewhat recent, but
the
um
twins, the twins.
the Martin twins.
Yeah, they were together for a little bit.
Yeah, but even I think it was like this off season. I can't remember, but um yeah, the Martin twins. I remember the Lopez twins played for the Bucks for a year.
And the Morris
Um
twins played for the
the
Suns.
Suns, yeah.
They were,
There's always teams that try to keep the brothers together, make them
I
happy.
would keep the brother. I like if there are brothers, especially if one is considerably better than the other one.
Like
I
Evan, yeah.
Yeah, I would bring in the other brother. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, I mean, if that's the cost of keeping your star around, then absolutely you bring in their family and try and schmooze them as best you can, right? Um, but yeah, so I think, and then the other, it was more of like a confusing draft for me than like just an actual loser. Was the Nuggets. Like I sort of get what they're doing. They're trying to get wings, which they obviously need, and they traded for. Um, but those trades kind of make less sense to me when you factor in that they spent 2 first round picks on young wings with Christian Brown and Peyton Watson. I did like Ishmael Kamagate. I thought that he's a really good backup center, even though they're going to stash him back in
Is that the
France.
one from? Oh, that's the France one. No, who's the?
Yeah,
Is it Khalifa
Coloco.
Dia? The
Oh,
one from
Giop.
Congo?
Yeah,
Yeah,
Giop plays in Spain. He's Senegalese. I
Senegal.
don't.
Okay, I knew it
Yeah,
was somebody. Okay.
yeah. He was drafted by the Cavs actually, so I really like that pickup because they don't have a lot of backup centers actually. Even though they're big, they don't have a lot of backup centers.
Once Jared Allen fell, they fell apart.
Yeah,
Once he, because Mobley's not ready to play it to be the physical presence yet,
yeah. They don't have. I mean, they have like a lot of
and
big
and
length
Laurie definitely
on the
can't do it.
roster. Yeah, they have a lot of long guys on the roster and 7 footers, but a lot of them are, I mean, they're all starting. They don't have anyone off the bench to really contribute right now. So Giop will spend like another year or two probably overseas and we'll see if he pans out. But I really like that pick. Um, yeah, I mean, also too, if we're talking about backup centers, the Toronto Raptors, I thought nailed their pick with Christian Coloco. I really
Yeah,
liked
from
that.
Arizona. Yeah,
Yeah. He's one of the more switchable guys out of the bigs that we've talked about. And he fits in their scheme because that's what they love to do, right? Just switch everything. And I mean, they have a lot of bigs right now. When they just re-signed Thaddeus Young, they have Precious Achua. They re-signed Chris Boucher, but I think out of all those guys, Koloko is probably the best bet to be more of a switchable defender than any of them. So I really like that pick, and I think he can contribute for them, and it makes some of the other guys they have more expendable because they need help in other positions.
yeah, man. I'm hoping Delano Blanton gets some more minutes.
I do like Banton, yeah.
That's what I
Nick
want to
Nurse
see
just
get
is
minutes.
stubborn and refuses to give guys that he doesn't like minutes. But
It's all good. But I wonder if they're gonna. I wonder if they're still gonna follow through and trade OG this summer.
we'll see. I don't know. It doesn't make a ton of sense to me because that their whole scheme is built upon switchable defense, and OG fits perfect into that. He's become a really good shooter, but we'll see what they trade him for if they trade him.
Might be something that happens in the locker room. I don't know.
Yeah, we don't
Yeah,
have access to that stuff, so it's hard to
yeah,
say.
yeah. But I felt like they weren't because they did extend both of them, Gary Trent and OG, and I was like, there's no way y'all keep both of them.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like I'd rather trade or Gary if I'm the Raptors because um, even though he's a really good shooter and really strong defender as a guard defender, I think that there's just more of those types of guys than there are the OG Ananobis of the world. It's just more easily replaceable. Um,
I think
yeah,
it'd be pretty much a coin. I think it'd be pretty much a coin flip, honestly. I think the
yeah,
difference is that Trent can Trent can explode offensively.
yeah,
He has those games where he drops 35, 40. You don't know where it came from. OG hasn't
yeah,
necessarily doesn't. Well, he might have the ability, but he hasn't really shown it yet.
yeah. Yeah,
Get
we'll
there.
see. Um, yeah, I was gonna ask you, what did you think of the Timberwolves draft? Because I thought it was terrible. I thought they
I
blew
mean,
that.
when I saw they first got Walker Kessler and Nah, they didn't get Laravia. Nah, they traded Laravia. They traded Laravia to Memphis. Jake Laravia to Memphis.
Yeah, they traded the review to Memphis. Memphis was obviously targeting them. And I had spoken with somebody before the draft who was close to the situation. It was like, yeah, we expect Laravia to not fall past the first round, but probably somewhere in the 20s. They didn't expect him to go 19, and he did. Memphis has a very clear target of the sort of guys they like. They just love high processors. They got Vince Williams Jr. late,
Memphis
Laravia.
likes dogs. That's just
Yeah.
what it is. Memphis likes dogs. You got to be a dog to
Yeah.
play in Memphis.
Yeah. But I mean, and that's how, like, this is why the draft is so important, because, like, look at how quickly they've turned around from pivoting from Mike Conley to in
Mhm.
Marc Gasol and Zebo to now you have like a really good team that's going to compete again, probably for like a Western Conference run, Western Conference Finals run. And it's all because they've drafted these guys, right? They've nailed the draft year in and year out, and they know exactly what they like and who to get and who to pinpoint, and they've developed them well, and that's why drafting is so important. And for like Minnesota, they just gave away all their picks for Rudy Gobert, and now
That oh my god, man.
you have
Um,
nobody to really put your future on now to develop or anything, and I mean, it's an
you're
all
you're
in
banking
bet,
on you're banking on that big four to somehow come out of the West.
and I don't
Like
think they can.
nah, man, nah, bro, nah. Yeah,
I did not get that move at all.
unless unless something crazy happens and they just win 60 games and get to the finals, and I'm giving the win of that trade to the Jazz.
Yeah, I mean, but and the fact that they're all unprotected just makes
Oh
no
yeah, they're all
sense.
unprotected. Like good God, man. Like I
Yeah,
don't
they
know. They
just and they gave away core players. Like, you gave away Patrick Beverly, who's really huge for them. You
like
gave away Jared
that was the
Van
surprise part. You gave away Beverly
and Vanderbilt,
and
who
Van.
played like who they were both starters for them. You gave away,
I don't think they could have got away without giving up Vanderbilt. But
yeah,
for
that's
the attitude of your team, you can't just give up Pat Bev.
that's five firsts and two starters, and then like more bench pieces on top of that. That was an ungodly package.
Well,
But yeah,
whoever,
I mean, credit to Utah now, because you have a lot of picks to work with, and maybe Utah hasn't been the best draft place. Like, they got Donovan Mitchell, obviously, but outside of that, they sort of struggle. They hit on some stars here and there. They find these diamonds in the roughs like Rudy and Mitchell, but a lot of times they miss. Um, but I think that when you have that many picks now, hopefully you can bring in guys and start developing and do what the Grizzlies do. We saw it too with the Cavs. Like, the Cavs went decimated once LeBron left. Super quickly they turned it around by hitting on Garland, Sexton, Mobley. Obviously they made the trade for Allen, but teams that do well drafting generally are going to go far. I think the Warriors are a testament to that too. So, and the Celtics, both of those teams are drafted mostly, and both got to the finals right now. So drafting is huge for the NBA, and I think that teams that really focus in and do well at it are going to have good futures.
all right, yeah, you're right. So I got a couple questions for you. Why do you hate Zach Levine and Terry Rozier so much?
Oh man, I mean, at this point it's become more of a meme than anything, but I mean, they're both really good offensive players. I just don't love guys that don't really play defense. And I think Levine just doesn't like playing defense. Offensively is ridiculous, and he's come a long way as an offensive player. He became a lot better over the past couple of years as a passer and distributor. And then Rozier, I thought would be a lot more inefficient than he was in Charlotte over his tenure. So yeah, I mean, I hate both of them as just to get jokes off, but I think in reality, both guys are good basketball players, and Levine's definitely deserving of the max that he just
why,
got.
why you hating on my man Kenny Lofton, man?
I think
I have
Lofton
a
is,
soft spot for fellow chubby basketball players. I have a soft spot.
hey, there's some that like Dacian Nix, for example, on the Rockets. Love Dacian Nix. I think he's like probably could be like the Rockets starting point guard. But Kenny Lofton is just, he's really skilled. He's just not able to, like, it's a whole
You
um
know who he reminds me of? Sullinger.
Yeah,
Like
except
like
he can't
Sullinger
shoot
when
like Cylinder. That was the
that
problem.
shot. No, trust. Watch that shot develop. That shot's gonna develop because that's
I
a
hope
nice
it
form he had.
does.
That's a
I
nice
mean,
form he has.
yeah, I always wish the best for players, and hopefully he gets a shot in the NBA and can crack rotations. But
They gave
and
him a two-way deal, so that's a.
yeah, and look
I'm
who
guessing
gave it
that's
to
why he
them.
stayed in. I'm guessing that's why he stayed in because the Grizzlies must have made him some type of promise. Because
Yeah, I mean,
I was 100% sure he wasn't getting drafted.
yeah,
But
and the Grizzlies are the like that's the developmental team to go to, right? So if anyone can make him an NBA player, it's the Grizzlies. I think that he does a lot of good things well on the court. It's just he's ground bound and can't shoot. And in theory, if you're big, that's really hard to succeed with in today's NBA. But we'll
I don't
see
even know
how
what
it
to
goes.
call him. I don't even know what to call him because it's like because they said he's
I
about
mean,
six. They said he's about 6'6" with shoes off,
yeah,
and he's about 280, and he's
he's
not like
just
he's like
an undersized traditional big.
the opposite of Zion.
Well, yeah, it's like Zion. Well, yeah,
Because
pretty
Zion is,
much not
Zion,
ground bound.
yeah, well,
Yeah,
I don't even know how he gets up that high.
yeah.
And
So
Lofton be surprised at people when he dunks.
yeah, so we'll see. We'll see how it pans out. Hopefully he pans out. What other questions you got for me?
Why the hate on my man Jello, bro? Why, why the hate on my man Jello, man?
Hey, I loved the Ball brothers coming up. Like I watched their shows. They used to have the show on like Facebook Live, I
Yeah,
think.
Ball in the
Um,
family.
yeah, I
It
used to watch
lasted.
them.
It lasted a while.
Yeah, I
About like
used to
five
watch that,
seasons.
and I loved that. Like, I mean, I'm from California. They're from not far from where I am. They're hometown kids. Went to
Mhm.
UCLA. Hard not to root for guys that come from where you're from. Um, and I loved Lonzo, loved LaMelo. Thought for a brief period that LiAngelo could make the NBA, so I wasn't totally against it. But he's just not there for me. Like he's just hopefully, like I said, I always wish the best for these guys. Hopefully he makes it, but I don't think the talent level is there. I don't think he's where his brothers are at in terms of the overall talent that he has. And now it's getting tougher and tougher because every year that goes by you age and NBA teams like you less and less. But we'll see how it goes. And I think is he still on the
Yeah, he's
swarm that
he's gonna
the
be he's gonna be in the summer league again.
for the Hornets again?
Yeah, for the Hornets again.
Okay, yeah. I mean, the Hornets obviously have a massive gap now with Miles Bridges gone. We won't get. I don't want to get too into that, but with Miles Bridges gone, now you have holes and usage to fill. So we'll see what happens.
I think I know like I think the whole thing about D'Angelo is that I feel like he's always been like the sacrificial lamb because a lot of those assists that Lonzo and Melo, those big old baseball passes that they throw, LiAngelo's the one that just catches them and finishes them.
Yeah,
Those behind the back passes and LiAngelo's
I
wide open.
I think in a way that does a dis or it did a disservice in high school though, because like
It did.
you're not allowing him to expand his game. He's just the outlet guy, and he's just sort of the Leangelo or sorry, Lamelo and Lonzo create everything, and he's just sort of the outlet for
Yeah,
everything. And I think it did a disservice a little bit in that regard.
it did. It did. It did because you would look at his numbers and be like, damn, he averaging 30, 35 points, and and
Then you look how you got him.
you watch how he gets them, and I mean, I think definitely he's still an NBA caliber shooter. I think he can shoot that bitch. But I mean, like, and then watching him playing the Drew, I know that Drew isn't the NBA, but it's still a decent level of competition. Like he has that same vision and that same feel for getting the ball up the court that his brothers do, and
Yeah,
everything that they lack, he excels in, and everything he lacks, they excel in. So it's kind of weird how that family's built. Like, you know,
yeah,
like Lonzo and Lamelo are like Tina, they're lanky, and
yeah.
Leangelo's like LeVar, he's kind of stocky and sturdy.
Stocky. Yeah,
And it's like, all I want is the Hornets to just like
have all three.
that first G League game they had when they gave him I think 27 minutes and he had 24 points. He didn't get neither one since that first game. I was like, damn man, y'all
Yeah,
messing with my guy.
yeah.
I'm
The Swarm are fun though. They with the I mean, they got Kai Jones and JT Thor. They're going to be a good G League team. And I think that helps with development. Like if you're on a good situation with a good team, that can only help Leangelo. So hopefully things turn out well for him.
I was happy that first game, that first summer league game last year when he got in. Oh man, that felt good. I was like, man, he been waiting on this.
Oh yeah.
He been waiting on this. But I ain't Stone. I ain't Stone. We gonna have to part ways now, brother. Glad to
Sounds
have you on the
good.
show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Appreciated talking with you.
All right, man. Be easy, dog.
Sounds good.